Africa, and I described we lived in a village, had no electricity and all that. And we're learning this language that wasn't written down at the time. After about a year, I could speak this language, and I started to share the gospel with them in a way that I'd learned in seminary about, we've all sinned and therefore we've fallen short. And because of our guilt, we're separated from God. And Jesus, though, takes our guilt upon himself, and therefore we have just standing before God, and then he lets you into heaven, and that relationship restored. So when I told the Bolsa people that, they look at me and like, well, that's interesting, but not really, So I'm like, wow, how did the gospel become like not interesting at all? Until I realized that this was not a culture where they experienced inner guilt. They weren't feeling guilty of their discretions or indiscretions. But what I realized was this is like a culture that experiences fear. So when I started to explain the gospel in those terms, where our early ancestors were close to God, but because of our sin, God put a curse upon humanity, and this curse then produces fear of witchcraft, evil eye, juju, which is their daily world. And God promised that he would send one to become the power of God to break that curse. And in that time, in the fullness of time, Jesus came to be the power of God to break that curse that was put upon humans. Everybody wanted to hear about that. So while they weren't interested in overcoming guilt, that just wasn't their reality, they were very cognizant that they were fearful and that they needed power to overcome that. And Christ, who gives them the power to overcome that fear, was good news to them. So I started to realize, well, that just by understanding their worldview changes their receptivity of that. Are there other cultures where this happens as well? And turns out there are. So that kind of set me on that journey.